Hello and welcome to Dulwich Picture Gallery. I'm very pleased to welcome you to our word of mouth spoken word event. This event is part of a 2-year Heritage Lottery funded project entitled Journeys, which is a project exploring stories of art, identity and belonging, and with an aim to tell new stories about our collection through the lens of migration and local community stories. Behind me is one of the project outputs, our wonderful Journeys display, co-created in collaboration with 5 local community members, each with their own personal lived experience in migration. In addition to the art on display, the text on the walls and the accompanying booklet, the display features a brand new commissioned spoken word piece entitled New Grounding, which has been created by spoken word artist Akila Richards and features the voices and stories of the community curators. It's this work which has inspired tonight's event, which really speaks to the gallery's vision that we want everyone who engages with the gallery, both in person and digitally, to find themselves in art. In a moment, we'll hear from 2 of our community curators before we hand over to our wonderful performers. I hope that you really enjoy the event and we look forward to seeing you at the gallery very soon.
Hello, my name is Ojoy Adeyemi. I am an asylum seeker with a heart for art, poetry and creativity. I got involved in this project as a community curator and worked with 5 wonderful women with lived experience of migration. We decided to include a spoken word poem in the exhibition because we believe poetry is art. And also myself and Pramila first wrote a poetic response to 2 of the paintings we were discussing during our weekly sessions of curating the exhibition. So we felt bringing an evocative soundscape to the exhibition is the best way to bring the emotions we felt during this period to light as a work of art by itself. The spoken word was created with inspiration from items we have in our individual homes, that is a symbol of our country of origin and the provocative reminder it bears with us. The poem on the return from Egypt was to bring to realization the plight of many refugees of great value, having contributed tremendously to the growth of their country of origin through their expertise and being forced to seek refuge in another country for a whole range of national, economic, environmental, social, and political reasons involuntarily. They've brought the same expertise to the country they are seeking refuge in and also contributed to its growth and development in various ways. But yet, they are being put down all the time without knowing the grave danger that awaits them if they return to their country of origin. As we all know, migration is not just an issue happening only in recent years, but has been a feature of human existence from earliest Neolithic times, with people moving around the world voluntarily or involuntarily. Often I've been asked, why I've not returned back to Nigeria as there is no ongoing war. My response has been, you don't understand, you can't understand. According to the poem, Jesus returning to receive a crown of thorns, unbeknown to his parents, is likened to the persecution a lot of migrants are faced with if they return back to their country of origin, which the severity is unknown to many who are not in that position. For someone in an abusive marriage and experiencing domestic violence, the house they have always lived in is no longer their home, but their home is the new place where they can recover and carry on with life. Whether you are forced to leave your much-loved room, job, house, town, or the country you grew up in due to sickness, domestic violence, persecution, war, economy, or anything whatsoever, you will at some point wish to return home. But home is the place where you are at peace, without fear, your place of safety and comfort. Before you say to someone to go back to where they came from, ponder on this. What is chasing you might not be chasing me, and what is chasing me might not be chasing you. Wherever you are on your journey, embrace it with courage. It will surely come to an end. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the event.
My name is Ranmali, and I'm an anthropologist and community worker, a migrant and daughter of immigrants, and a community curator on the Journeys display. We decided to include a spoken word poem in the display because poetry was part of Journeys from the beginning. Two of our community curators wrote poetic responses to the conversations we were having as a group about our joy and frustration of reinterpreting the old masters. The collection at Dulwich Picture Gallery is grounded centuries ago, so we wanted to commission something new. We wanted to bring out old connections through a new medium, and that was the start of our spoken word soundscape, New Grounding. We created New Grounding with the poet Akila Richards. One by one, she asked us questions about our journeys in English, and one by one, we answered in our mother tongues. Our recording session with Akila was one of the most emotional meetings we had in the process of creating Journeys. It was the first time we had heard each other speak in our respective languages, and all of a sudden, our conversations felt different. They felt personal. We didn't have time to intellectualize our answers. We had to just speak from the heart. I believe New Groundings provides an important counterpoint to the physical display. It exemplifies that despite the diversity of our 6 community curators' journeys and those of the old masters before us, the experience of migration unites us all through a shared understanding. At the same time, it also demonstrates the uniqueness of each of our journeys. As you hear our own stories in our own languages, you might get a glimpse of understanding through an English word here or a familiar sound there. But ultimately, most of our stories remain veiled, shrouded in unfamiliar words. And that is because each of our journeys is our own and never wholly knowable to anyone else. At the end of our display in the gallery, we ask each visitor to reflect on their own journeys through the images and sounds we have brought together and leave a message in our Journeys visitor book. I'd like to extend this invitation again and ask, as you listen to the words of Inua Ellams, Jaspreet Kaur, and Akila Richards, to take a moment to reflect not only of what you hear of your own journey in their poems, but also what is uniquely yours. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Odonaya and Ramali. Welcome all to Word of Mouth, a performative showcase with national and internationally touring, award-winning poets, spoken word artists and writers, Inua Ellams, Jaspreet Kaur, and Akila Richards. Across the rest of the evening, the performances will explore the heritage of journeys and migration, identity and belonging, which link it to the key themes of the Journeys display. Please welcome the first of our performers, Akila Richards.
Greetings. My name is Akilah Richards. I'm a writer, poet, and spoken word artist. I perform in national and international settings, and I've been to the Caribbean, Europe, and Africa. I collaborate with different artistic genres, and I'm very happy to perform at Dulwich Picture Gallery for the Journey exhibition. Thank you. I'd like to introduce you to the first poem. This is around migration on a bigger scale, and this is asking a question. Human. We rushed forward, dancing on flying clouds, our breath coloring landscapes. We carried structures and seeds, walked the path of fire, stayed alive. We divided oceans, snaked through dimensions to find ourselves in the future. Archaeological digs, our statues and bones on another planet, before we decided what human is. Now that we have landed on this planet we call Earth, I'd like to explore a little bit more what it means to be landing and to keep landing. Islander. I land plait and braid cultures into humanity, pathways into your heartland, trailing south to north. I land, shift ice, crack continents, cease fire from the margins. My heart forged a gorge with grit. I land, return unpaid labor, heart savior to my true motherland. Her bounty, a lifeline to now. I land to stay. I've been despised, sucked dry, heartlessly discarded. But for centuries, I've known I land, arrived with wise eyes, seen countries flooded, turn to dust. Here reappears that first heartbeat. I land. This particular poem means quite a lot to me. It is a different version from New Grounding for the sound sculpture for the Journey exhibition. I wanted to play a little bit with the environment, with nature, and how we find ourselves as humans and how we morph in nature and how nature moves in us. Whilst we migrate, whilst we have to flee and have our experiences. Grounding. From crushing revolutions to that big bang, the old ones are wrecked, barely alive. Still, they grow harder and trickier against the raging climbing up their core. Stark silhouettes weep and exhale opaque steam in airless fright that steals light and runs riot and endlessly craves to hollow out heartlands and old ways of passing. Survivors shed belonging in gouged solace. Let perish the broken, lay down the slain before the stench twists. No bitter myth shall penetrate their future, already buried and muted in memoirs of old escape tunnels. Break if you're rigid. Test years of holding cells, toil in hostile soil until tipping point. Some reach, many sink, and a few land. Tell and echo forever that hope in your veins touches heaven. That faith restores the dead and how free air unbreaks lives, turns composted dreams into protests and melts fear into lucid wounds, seals screaming nerves and clots petrified moments in enlarged hearts into hard amber, bypassing rupture and fracture. And frankincense smoke webs above the spinning earth. here. The scattered merge, pivot and wield a wild song, and crack open sinkholes where stoned voices erupt, hot as bridges to their origin. Black matter is universal. Towers topple. Courage tosses out ocean of grief. Peel your gaze and see it through with rebirthed eyes under seething sky. And remember this, that the last warm ashes resurrected you. This poem I dedicate to forced migration, to people who have to flee in whatever fashion, often crossing the oceans. Birthing beach. Sea is an open tomb, waking from her dream, rocking them dark into a sinking lie. Hope is a life below tattered sails, radiating families and a million stars. A shooting rocket into seas, geysers scream. The boat, a torn country. Lives stunned in high air, bodies hope and her ghosts plunge into sea's red wet skirt under hard waves. Night clinks behind her shroud. Above now, bright and blue, sea bleeds anew, morning shores of mothers, her buoyant babies and fathers, and hope lands another million discarded shards. This particular poem I'm going to recite to you is around how we find different cultures, different generations, different people, different thoughts in us. And yet those people who give us might not know each other, might not even like each other, but yet we are that result of it. And however it turns out, I want to thank my givers. My mother's Eastern eyes stand out in mine. Closed, they observe the unseen. My father's southern lips draw in unspoken longing, translated in my first tongue-tied kiss. My mother's Nordic hands hug me till grown. Then her ashes migrate under sea, extending in orange soil. My father's mother lends me her stretched thighs, rebirthing east, south, north, and the rest. My hands open my eyes, stroke my lips, and lift my thighs. They love each other well, even if the givers don't. This particular poem is talking about children who have been left behind, particularly in the Windrush generation. When adults and parents came to the UK, to Europe, to Canada, to America, and set up there, and left their children behind. And I wondered about those children, the longings they must have after years of waiting. Shapeshifter. Between bouts of belonging and numbness, she is gripped by an urge so strong that she physically changes shape. Wide-mouthed, bottom out, and waiting empty to be filled with buttered kisses, layered surprises of round hugs, like the barrel her mummy ships across the ocean every eternity. This particular poem I want to dedicate to lovers, to people who are poor, to people who find joy no matter what. Ritual for a mango. Every time we run out of food waiting for the paycheck, you come and bring a mango wrapped in a brown paper bag. Every time I measure its heaviness, pressure its density, and unwrap the gold, the red, the green, and immerse it under running water. I wipe its curves into a shine. I push away the chunky stalk and plunge the knife deep into orange depths, quarter and slice it until the juices run into an orange pool on the plate. Every time we sit in the kitchen eating mango, dive our lips and teeth into skin and flesh, sucking, chewing, scraping the stone naked until the fibers stick between our teeth, and with sticky fingers, mouth and chin. Putu putu, putu putu, putu putu. The baby kicks in my tummy, savoring the freshness of mango inside. And this is the last poem, and I want to dedicate it to us, people, to everyone in this world, in this room. We have been through difficult times. We will go through other difficult times. But there is something about focusing on what we have and who we are and what we see and choose to see. Now I see. Now I see grandmothers rise from stone walls, market stools, dented old people chairs. These old women swirl in layered skirts, labor trousers with worn golden hands and watchful gaze, daring and bearing soul releasing laughter in puffy seeds for next time you breathe. Now I see we wake beyond anti-self, me, my, mine, urgently inhale Ubuntu. Gather wandering footprints below the sea, bury ancestors' bones home. From under mansions, walls of museums, besides tall, tall palm trees backed by green hills, looking out for you, watching over me. Now I see cracked boats, whipped ships, turned along into stone. No longer break spine for pride and prejudice and power. Gangland and hang states, empty empires. Sit, lie down, look up. Black velvet counts every future, start in all eyes. Seek freedom is truth as one word. Less is more is light. Now I see stifled mothers weaving, plaiting sari, folding time over ages. Stop. Take charge of their stolen daughters' trafficked wombs, stolen sons' trafficked hearts. Return a life from killing, birthing, killing. No more. Millions transcended selves walk the night lightly. Now I see every refugee's child's life rebirthed, unravel in the midday sun. Layers of exhaustion stroked away, until they bounce along in new safe skin in cities, meadows, desert dunes, with headphones, afros and eyes aglow, wide, generous smiles, hear them sing for lack of fear. Now I see disorientated borders, no nations, just people, billions, look like you, look like me, replant erased landscapes, regrow desolate forests, create stories that heal homeless countries, refill heartless lives. We recreate the artist we are, live love undisrupted for the art we hold bold. Now I see reality not new, not changed, not even different to now. I cannot help seeing the promised land in the cracks of our veneer, between the blink from dark to light, the universe between breaths, the void before thought, the silence, here, now, in you, me, we.
Hi, my name is Jaspreet Kaur, also known as Behind the Netra. I'm a spoken word poet, writer and history teacher with an academic background in both history and gender studies. I first started writing poetry at the age of about 13, and at that time it was a way to release a lot of those darker emotions I was holding inside of me. I was suffering from anxiety attacks and then depression, and poetry was the only way I could let those feelings out. It was only about 5 years ago that I first started sharing that poetry with the world. And that's when I realized that poetry can be such a powerful tool for social change. It can also be a really powerful tool for communities that are often silenced, muted, and ignored. And finally, it can also be such a powerful way of finding a sense of healing. Today, the poems I'll be sharing with you all will be sharing the stories of my granddad and my mum. The first poem that I'll be sharing is entitled Ajit Singh, after my late grandfather. My granddad migrated to the UK in the early 1960s from Punjab, and like many immigrants of that time, faced many hardships and a lot of struggle. But I also want to share his story of resilience as well. So this poem, entitled After His Name, Ajit Singh, really shows you the meaning of his name, Ajit, which means unconquered. I see the veins on your hands come closer to the surface, and I'm nervous. I sit by you, imagining the untold stories that flow within them. I watch you inhale and exhale, a taste of survival, a strength built since arrival, tattooed into your lungs, a lost linger of exile, living at the constant rate of breath. A village boy with ambition in his eyes, afraid but you tried, rolling into a rat race, not knowing a word of their speech, determined not to lose the language of your ancestors or forget the prayers that you preached. Sometimes I think about the non-stop rain and storms that must have weathered you. We never knew. The way that their words would attempt to rub the colour off of you. Eventually you learnt a second tongue, but your heartbreak remains unsung until your family could be with you. Still afraid and so young, it took years till your rewards could be sown. Days and nights in factories with destinations unknown. Eventually, you became hyphenated. A British Indian, but in no way did that divide the essence of your roots, the blood, the sweat, the tears, or the territorial disputes. You conquered a land that conquered your bloodline. It's a thin line between going back, giving up, and the finish line. You set the foundation to our existence. You passed that power to my parents, and you encouraged their self-subsistence, continuing to give your name justice. You now sit by your radio, dari long and white, and defined by every strand. Your skin still rich with the colours of your homeland. I smell tea and biscuits. You're reading the paper, today's news in hand. But your stories remain untold because they'll never understand. The next poem I would love to share with you all is a poem entitled National Anthem. It was a poem that I wrote when I was really exploring what it meant to be brown and British. Being a Sikh, Punjabi woman of colour sometimes can be a really lonely and isolating experience, a confusing experience, especially when you're continuously being asked microaggressions like, where are you really from? And sometimes I don't know how to answer that question. Do I say East London? Do I say London? Do I say Punjab? And as a Sikh, a minority population in India with less than 2% of the overall population, we are a minority, a group that has often been oppressed, ignored, and muted. So I don't know what my national anthem is, and that's why I wrote this poem. I feel like I have to wear my identity on my hip like a weapon, rather than a badge of honor on my chest, the place I would have put my hand to rest if I had a national anthem to sing. But I don't. In the words of Ijeoma, too foreign for home, too foreign for here, never enough for both. When two halves don't really make a whole, when your nation never really feels like home, how are we ever meant to find our own birds of a feather? Must be flock alone forever. The next two poems that I'd love to share with you all are two poems that I wrote for my mum, one of the strongest women that I know and one of my biggest inspirations. Her stories inspire a lot of the work that I write, because often her story is one that's been ignored, one that's been muted, one that's been silenced. And that goes for a lot of women of colour that have migrated here to the UK. My mum migrated here in 1979 when she was marrying my dad. It was the first time she even stepped on an aeroplane, not knowing a word of English, and leaving her entire family back home in Punjab. So I write poems to share her stories, her memories. So this next poem is called Mama's Memories. Rough fingers, strong and steadfast, weaving secrets of the ancestors into her daughters' long braids, secret knowledge smuggled into new lands, names of old friends whispered into bones where they vibrate. She'll never forget them, playing games on golden soil, running through the rye, sleeping under the stars, old rhythms and bollian still resting on her lips, folk dances and gidda still resting on her hips, bleeding from the heart, flooding from the lungs, pushing at the rib cage, waiting, ready to burst out. Those days are so far away now, she says. Talk to me, daughter. Help me remember them. That poem is always a really special one to share. Those memories of my mum's childhood, those memories of my mum's story of coming here to the UK usually get told to me at a really special time. And that time that she would tell me these stories was a mixture between story time and hair care. It would be when she'd be putting oil into my hair, a tradition that's been passed down for 5,000 years amongst South Asian women, a way for women to share the things that they're holding inside. Now, this final poem is one that I also wrote for my mum. And it was written at a time where Mum and I were having our usual 5 o'clock cup of jar, catching up about our day like we always did. We had the TV playing on in the background, and on the screen was a music video by a popular Australian rapper, and she was there performing her music, adorned in a beautiful red lenga. She was wearing a tikka, a nath, and she had Bollywood backup dancers dancing behind her. And this rapper was not an Asian singer or rapper or performer. She was a white Australian woman. Mum looked over at the screen and she saw the performer in this beautiful red lenga, adorned in this beautiful Indian jewellery, and she said, "Wow, doesn't she look amazing? Doesn't she look beautiful?" And I didn't really make much of Mum's comment. But the next thing she said really shook me to my core. And she said, "It breaks my heart that I could never wear those things when I first came here. Because when my mum first migrated to the UK and worked in our corner shop, she didn't feel comfortable or safe to exist in her natural wear, in her salwar kameez. She saved up enough money to buy a pair of jeans from Marks and Spencer's and wore my dad's naff jacket over the top. because she didn't want to hear those daily racial slurs under everyone's breath as they walked into the shop. That naff jacket and those pair of jeans became my mum's new armor. And I just felt this type of cultural exchange just wasn't fair. And it's called cultural appropriation, the title of this next poem. Brown women wore shisha in their clothes since the 17th century, and now they're worn more beautifully as if they weren't meant for me. I see them on runways, weaved into their embroidery so cheaply, when for centuries their reflections were enough for a man to fall in love so deeply, because brown women have been wearing nuts since the 16th century, and now they're worn more beautifully as if they weren't meant for me. I remember one time I wore a bindi to school. I thought it was pretty, but they called me a fool. They said, "Go back to your country with your stinking clothes." Now I see them in almost every music video, so I say, hey, what now makes it so cool? Because brown women were wearing biles since the 1st century, and now they're worn more beautifully as if they weren't meant for me. Their chimes alone acted as inspiration for poetry. You should read the Akila Richards. Maybe, or maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong to assume that the same mouths that made the word immigrant so dirty are the same mouths craving for a curry on a Friday night or a chai tea latte. Because brown women have been wearing mendi vale since the Vedic century, and now they're worn more beautifully as if they weren't meant for me. I had patterns on my palms that could put petals to shame. Their stains are enough for lions to lose their tame. Their curves and lines are considered hypnotic. Now I bet your henna tattoos make you feel so damn hipster and so damn exotic. I'm not saying that our lives can't be shared and symbiotic. I'm just saying that we shouldn't have been degraded in the process. Whilst they mocked our linguistics, the artistics, and the symbolic, we were crying to be cut loose from the shackles of colonialism. Oh, the irony of Indian women scraping their heavenly dark skin with beauty creams, trying to be lighter. While some fake up their tans, we cry to be whiter. My thick hair was decided for me before I was even in the womb. And let me assure you that my brown skin isn't some kind of costume. We tried our best to adopt a cultural milieu. We molded ourselves into the surrounding area like glue, but who are we trying to fool? We just look more out of place like animals in a zoo, but assimilation is a complete separate issue, and I'll leave that to Fanon to discuss, because we shouldn't have to blend. For once, can we not pretend that my beautiful culture is not a trend to be passed on like bell-bottom jeans and feathered hair? This is my beauty. And I'm happy to share, but not at the cost of belittlement, and not in combination with a comment on my mother's accent. We've been too busy living in the dust of an empire that burnt our worth, that we refuse to grow from the ashes. But I am no longer ashamed. I shall wear my kajal along my long lashes, and I shall wear my seeds with pride, so we can flourish. So sure, wrap yourself up in a sari whilst we unravel ourselves from self-hatred and low self-esteem. Unweave the oppression, and we'll let go of this victimhood stitched into the seams. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Inua Ellams. I am a poet, a playwright, and a performer. I was born in Nigeria and left there when I was 12 years old to settle here in the United Kingdom. I've been an immigrant ever since, and 3 words rise as themes from my work: identity, displacement, and destiny. And some of the poems, in fact, all of the poems I'm reading riff on those themes. I hope you enjoy them. This first poem is called Private School. It imagines a time around 1641, before Nigeria was colonized. And it mythologizes an ancestor of mine when I was 8 years old. Private school. The year is 1641. My ancestor is an 8-year-old child of mischief, flinching at the thin breeze noosing his neck. He turns for reassurance from his mother and finds the sibling he's yet to love suckling. He swallows a sudden anger bright in his mouth and leaves the hut. Outside, night hugs the skies over the village, over each stride of forest, unfurl of leaf, each stem turning as it falls to the path he takes. He stops just short of the secret clearing where all the boys of the village practice grappling from the waist, the steps to lift and throw a rival down. The champion wrestlers laugh at their awkward twist, and my ancestor aches to show his skill. Weeks ago, when his father explained that strange boats, longer and wider than trees, had docked just beyond the valley, and he and a fist of brave men would journey to see who had come, he promised to keep from fighting, obey his mother. Months after, when the moon-colored men come, my ancestor, who's dragged uphill to hide with the wives and children, watches the wrestlers try against the rain of gunfire and swords and screams as the bodies fall to chains. In the heaving darkness of a club, centuries later, I watch the silent island men sway to reggae. Their eyes shut tight as if recalling private lessons. They twist with the grace of water and waves. They move with a sorrow only oceans know. The next poem is called Still at Sea, and it's written from the point of view of my mother watching this frenetic arts-led kid who I was at the time essentially live out nightmares playing around his head in real time and being frightened and worrying about him. Still at Sea, this is the poem. It's written after a poem of the same title by Sarah Maguire. This is it. Each night you return from the Mediterranean, just touching Marseille, and would dream of the sea. Its rough surface, tiled smooth by the workmen you draw at the table, each diligently clicking into place the baked earth. Against your father's wishes, I'd watch you gripping pillows as you dreamt of drowning, packed as you were between the sheets, locked inside yourself. Then in the morning, you'd leave to school full of maps and tremors and find your classmates too risible, too confident in soil's surety. In a Jawa estate, your dream engulfed our new home, a house by the airport where the sky's roar shook the window panes. Standing by the kitchen sink in your cloaked shirt, soaked up to your elbows in soap, you look out to find the clouds hiding the plains, cloaking their descent. At night, alone with the moonlight and a smallish sketch pad, you imagined yourself a maverick architect, reconstructing Atlantis, your lap full of rulers, the moon shifting their position to whiten your ankles, to throw a ghostly sheen over you. It occupied you for months, watching the skies shift, those aircrafts come and go. Each morning there were grid lines erased from the sea you had painted, proof you distrusted your attempt at safe passage, as if in your dreams, walking among the waves and workmen, a plane lost its wings, crashed through your foundations, drowning the passengers. Bodies surfaced, faces frozen, mouths agape, eyes like soaked moons, teeth jewelling darkness, dissolving to suffocating darkness and skin. 3 years of silence before you found adequate words to tell. Years where I'd spread out your drawings on the floor, to guess at your thoughts, scrubbing your scribbles off the walls, for them to reappear days later, haunting us, scouring the surface, deep, violent, compulsive slashes, like how a child might score the edge of a table when no one was there to look, only the smell of scrubbed tiles and a mother with a bucket slipping out of view. The next poem is a much shorter one. It's called National Anthem. And this is written about home, about longing and thinking about home, Nigeria specifically, and a corner of the house that I lived in Lagos, in Ajawa Estate. A national anthem. It's a very short poem, which is really one long sentence. That's the conceit. This is it. The mango seed you hid in the left corner under the grand piano in the back room of the house in which you were born, on the corner of Joy Avenue, in a warm suburb overlooking a highway's traffic chugging north towards the airport for long-distance flights over choppy waters, sailboats, yachts, and ocean liners, now silhouettes in the picturesque sunset where you land and taxi out to cold, snow-slushed streets of gray neighborhoods and slim buildings creaking with metal stairs and small apartments tight as veins you want to pry open on the damp floor in the right corner where the keyboard tinkles out our national anthem. Will still grow when you return. I run a project called The Midnight Run, which is about gathering a group of people to explore the city for a duration of time, from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. or from 6 p.m. to midnight. It's about creating a community of immigrants, urban migrants, to travel for a duration of time and experience the city as one. Is also how I write poetry a lot of the times. It comes from the experience of traveling, of looking for ideas, attempting to pin them down to create sense and meaning, and finally share them with the community for one night. This is a poem which unites both two themes. It's called Guerrilla Garden Writing Poem. The mouth of the city is tongued with tar. Its glands gutter saliva, teeth chatter in rail clatter, throat echoes car horns and tires screech, forging new language, a brick city smoke speak of stainless steel consonants and suffocated vowels. These are trees and shrubbery, the clustered flora battling all hours, staccato staggered through streets. Meet Rich and Eleanor on Braeburn Grove as he wrestles her wheelbarrow over cobblestones to the traffic island by Quito Road, where this night, colored a turquoise grit, cathedral quiet and saintly, makes prayer of their whispers and ritual of their work. Bend over, clear rubble, cut weed, and plant. But more than seeds are sown here. You can tell by his tended pat and tended patch, the soft cuff to a boy's head, first day to school, by how they rest with parent pride against stone walls, huff into winter's cold, press faces together as though two lips might stem from two lips, gather spades, forks, weeds, and go. Rich wheelbarrows back to Eleanor's as vowels flower, of flowers vowel through smoke speak. Soil softens the city, drenched with new language thrills, and the drains are drunk with dreams. The sky sways on the safe side of tipsy, and it's altogether an alien time of half-life and hope, an afterfight of gentle fog and city smog, where the debris of dew drips to this narrative of progress, this city tale, this story is my story, this vista, my song. I cluster in the quiet, stack against steel, seek islands, hope, and a pen to sew with. I'm going to read a poem called Sunflowers. This is about displacement. It's about searching for home, for safe spaces, but it's also about depression, particularly in urban environments. This is it, sunflowers. What I'm trying to say is Kelechi hates sunflowers because Tyrone grew obsessed after his class day trip to the countryside. That first time he left the hulking concrete of his ends, that afternoon where the sky, enormous as it always is, looked down on him, Tyrone for the first time looked back as if into the face of God, properly studying its swoops and tonalities, the contours of the countries of clouds, and the force that rose in him to match his unblinking vastness brought him down to his knees, where he squelched his fingers into the good and clean earth, drilling his black thumb into the blacker soil. The teacher scolded him all the way home for his mud-streaked seat and soiled trousers. What she didn't know is Tyrone had planted saplings of his spirit among the fields of barley and seeds of himself among the sunflowers, and these kept calling for him when they returned to the city of bricks, clawing for their kin. Though he filled his room with them, he couldn't match life out in the field, the sky's unencumbered gaze over their choir of black faces, their petals like flattened crowns or ruffled halos. So Tyrone walked out his fourth-floor window to join them, and Tyrone never came home. I'm going to read this poem called Deserts, and it's also about traveling, but about mysticism, about the wonders of the earth and searching for who you are or who you think you're meant to be. It's written after a poem by Kaya Chingonyi, and this is called Deserts. Take the path that begins among the neem trees, as far as the stream bled of all water. Sift through its dried bed of discarded boots. You will find a rust-covered compass, buff against your sleeves. When it winks with sunlight, go whichever way its needle points north. Turn right when the farmland thins to a grassy sheen. You will come to a village with none of its youth. Place your palm on the closest hot husk until you sense the winds quickening tremble the walls. Punch through. Push down into the hole and grab the topmost sash of vulture feathers. Hold one between your teeth until your tongue numbs. Bite down. When you regain consciousness, the hut will be the sand dunes around you. The desert will hold you in its golden nothing. Lift the camel skull by your inner left thigh. Look through where once lived its left eye. You will find, stretched from horizon to the petrified sky, the answer to whom you were meant to be, how you bested that self, and why this is still just you beginning. And this is the final poem called Lovers, Liars, Conjurers, and Thieves. It's a long poem about walking through South London from the South Bank Centre to Peckham, where I used to live. And it's about all of those things: identity, migration, belonging, nationality, who you belong to, how you create safe spaces, and those that antagonize those spaces. It's also about joy. Lovers, Liars, Conjurers, and Thieves, an ode to South London. After 5 hours tied to break beats so thick you could bitch slap a rapper with. Rave drunk on bass, funk and melody, I slouched sweat heavily by Waterloo Bridge and ready myself to ride home. Now, from the moment I cross over the bridge and leave the South Bank light sparkling, breathe. The River Thames with its long lapping happenings high-fives the riverside walls for me. The road is free, usual for this hour, and its silence starts to shiver that shudders the road signs. Its flow winds by beanbags, burst like ripe fruit. 2 foxes make harvest of its juice. If you look past their fur, you hear the soft purr you might have once poured into your lover's ear. When caution thrown clear, another shadow cover was smothered in an alley with his lips. But lover stiff, one fox's paw fist, and the battle cries riff through the day's remnants of torn bags, beer cans, cigarettes, and spliffs. Elephant and Castle is a coral reef resplendent, rippling with daredevil kids, too schooled in cool to catch the pickpocket whose wrist flick shimmers like blades. A shoal of girls clothed in tinsel dresses burp and bubble with ale. Their cheap garments ripple like fish scales, dazzling migrants sailed from a nightly slave of mop buckets, bathrooms, broomsticks, and piss. Their tired limbs just about miss drunk cyclists swim cross traffic, who brake too late, front wheels crash, chains erupt, pedals smash, perhaps now the limit like the rest of us to going nowhere fast. Camberwell is cliche hell. The bars spill out the steady swell of weed smoke, desperate men and willing women, whose red-tipped fingers, the same red you have cried into cold mirrors, against loneliness, that darker shade of blush, stroke their bare arms with, yes, my place is yours tonight. This same crimson rims the eyes of dry lips addicts, too fixed and last fixed to catch the faint wisp of endless hope, haunting a lone street lamp, whose glow halos the crowns of boys, heads bowed low, shoulders swayed to and fro, hands folded to form two fingers barreled before a cocked thumb. The silent guns punch the air, salute the beatboxer's steady glare, his pressed breath, fresh carpet over which the MC spit in lines, conjures their lives in rhyme. Rising out the last bastion of breath, Peckham rests in South Fortress. By the library, two unmarked vans park for stop and searches. For all their stealth, rubber-soled boots, gloves, and high-powered torches, all the hours spent bent on code names, seeking swift results to deep problems, leads here where metal sticks choke black throats. For all the stealth and state-given right, they can't steal the fight from Peckham's young, whose back still broad, head sore rise, skin soaked shine of the new blue moon, whose dominance is fractured by the scattered lights of a firework, out of place but welcome. Close by, a barman toasts his stolen gin. A night's baby gurgles in a plastic cot. A student pauses before a full stop, and the culprit strikes again. A swift-struck matchstick blooms. The fireworks, blossoming upwards, explodes outwards, a bouquet of sparkle flames, petling out against the sky, so bright it beats the sun down. 2 hours pass before it tries to climb the horizon again. Finds me hunched over my laptop light, trying to let my fingers know what my heart means by this journey, mashed of instances where beanbags splash, sackfish crash, and a rapper freestyles the scene. Well, this is how it has always been. Lovers, liars, conjurers, and thieves, all the world is a breakbeat backed by these, over which the poets sing. Thank you.
Thank you, Inua. Thank you, Akila. Thank you, Jaspreet. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We have come to the end of the Word of Mouth event. If you would like to revisit this event, we're happy to announce that the recording will be on the Dulwich Picture Gallery's YouTube account. So you will be able to reflect on and enjoy this event again. If you are interested in what other events are coming up at the gallery, do keep an eye open on our What's On page on the website and follow us on social media. The Journeys display will be open until the 22nd of August 2021, and we are so pleased that we are now able to welcome people to the gallery. We end the Journeys display with an invitation for visitors to leave a comment in our online visitors book about their journey, and today we would like to invite you to do the same. We will end with a QR code on the screen that you can scan to share your own personal stories with us. We hope to see you at the gallery soon.